Welcome back to Conversations with Therapists. Today I'm joined by Jonathan Zalesne of the Colorado Center for Couples and Families. Jonathan, thank you for being here.
It's my pleasure.
So, Jonathan, you made a significant career shift from a 25-year executive and consulting career to becoming a couples therapist. How did that transition shape your approach to helping couples heal and connect?
Well, I think it's interesting. My old career, I enjoyed it very much, but it was quite a bit different from this one. I got divorced in 2004, and I think that really shaped my decision to be a couples therapist. When I decided to shift careers in 2009 or so, and I went back to school, I had an idea to be a therapist and specifically to be a couples therapist. So I think my own experience, my own life experience, my experience with my own relationships is really what has shaped me to want to work with couples. And the type of therapy that I do, emotionally focused couples therapy, is very much aligned with the way that I think about people and relationships and love and marriage, etc.
At the Colorado Center for Couples and Families, you focus on treating the relationship and not just the individual. Can you explain why that distinction matters and what that looks like in a typical session?
Yeah, it's funny. I do talk about that in sessions sometimes too. Couples therapy, it's obviously two people in the room, but I really do look at it as the relationship itself is what I is my client. And it helps me look at that and say, when I'm talking to somebody, I'm always looking from the perspective of the relationship. So sometimes the relationship itself will ask a question, why can't you guys work this out? I don't understand. You clearly love each other. What is going on that's blocking you from working together and making this relationship what you want it to be? And when we start to work with individuals, which we obviously do some of that too, you very much start to get into people touching the part of them that feels shame or upset about the way they're showing up or anger with their partner. So we really do try to make the relationship itself the client. It really helps me not take a side or start to become too biased. It's my experience that both people want the relationship itself to succeed. That's why they're in it.
You mentioned earlier that you specialize in emotion focused therapy or EFT, which goes
Mhm.
beyond surface level communication. How would you
Yeah.
say EFT helps couples uncover the deeper emotional patterns that drive conflict and disconnection? And also, for any of our listeners who might not know what EFT is, aside from the title, what can you tell us about the basics of EFT?
Well, EFT stands for emotionally focused therapy. It's now EFCT, emotionally focused couples therapy. EFT takes a very bottom-up approach towards relationships. Most couples therapies are behavioral in nature, where it's really a therapist trying to talk to their clients and help them kind of change the way they behave and to behave differently. And what we know and what we've noticed over time is that those types of interventions don't last very long because we haven't really addressed the underlying issues that cause people to behave in disconnecting ways. And so what EFT does is we look at the disconnection itself and we say, we think it's based on some level of insecurity in the relationship, some lack of belief or lack of trust that your partner is going to be there in the way that you need them to be when you need them to be there. And so we really help you slow down your conversations in the therapy room and create a much deeper understanding of what's going on inside of you when you're reacting the way that you are. We look at negative behaviors as ineffective reaches. I'm trying to reach to you to tell you how much I need you to be there for me in this way. That's why I'm always nagging you or yelling at you or criticizing you or whatever it is. So these behaviors are meant as a reach, but instead they push their part. They end up pushing the partner away and creating more disconnection. When we start to look at that and can see the way that people are bouncing off each other and are reacting to micro cues that they're getting from their partners, we really start to get a better understanding of what's causing these negative behaviors. And so that's what we do with EFT. We really help slow everything down and organize what's going on in a way that people don't feel shamed, they don't feel like they're being criticized, and that they can really show up differently and start to reach to their partner in a more effective way.
This is an off script question, but something I was curious about as you were speaking about how the relationship is the client. That's a really nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
When clients come to you, how do you make an effort to make space for the two different narratives that you're getting while trying to come to some sort of productive course of action? Meaning you have two people that are comprising this relationship that for one reason or another is struggling. How do you said not picking sides or whatever it was, how do you balance the two perspectives and try to hear what each person is saying and respect what each person is saying while also trying to be some sort of voice of objective reason? If that
Yeah.
makes
It's
sense.
such a good question, Deborah. I really love that question. It's a little bit of an art, to try to kind of hold both perspectives and talk to people in these very direct ways about the issues that they're having with their partner without upsetting their partner or upsetting them. I think one of the things that we do when we look at it from a relational perspective and we say the relationship is the client, what we can really do is we can say, look, let's look at what you're doing as a matter of how effective it's being, rather than judging it of whether it's good or bad. And so what we say is, what we know is that what you're doing is intended to improve the relationship. It's intended to bring your partner closer to you. The fact that it isn't working is an interesting mystery. I wonder why this isn't happening the way we want it to. And so we look at those things from more of what's effective and what's not effective, rather than judging it as what's good and what's bad. And when we start to do this, we also start to look at things. Sue Johnson, who developed emotionally focused couples therapy, she used to say things like, all behavior is reasonable and has a reason. It doesn't mean it's good behavior or effective behavior, but it's coming from a place that is intended to bring your partner closer. So what we start to do is really address those good intentions, and we start to help people see how their behaviors are not being effective in creating what they want. And then we ask them, I wonder why. We really bring the clients into helping us solve the mystery. I wonder why this isn't working the way we want it to work. That helps create a real balance and helps reduce the amount of judgment in the room. Does that answer the question that you asked?
Yeah, it does. It sounds like a lot of what happens in these sessions is kind of a bit of a juggling act and like really taking everything in and assessing along the way. It's not a one size fits all. Every relationship has its nuances and things that need special attention. It sounds like that's your specialty, is taking everything in and really addressing things in a way that doesn't put shame or blame, but it's a way of seeing things and what can we do from this? How can we move upwards from this and forwards from this to help the relationship and not get stuck in the you did this, you did that, this is your fault, and this is why we ended up on this sofa together in this office.
Yeah, yeah,
So
that's exactly right. Oftentimes creating that balance is a really difficult thing to do. The reason I think that it works, at least with me, when I'm teaching new therapists how to do this work, I'm always asking them to look inside for the authentic truth. So for me, I do believe for most of my clients, and when I don't believe this, then I have work to do to try to get to this place. But for the vast majority of my clients, after I've met them and understand them, I can really feel the good intentions of, or I wouldn't even want to say good, the intentions of what they are trying to do. And I can feel how much they are desperate to create change in their relationship. And so when I can really feel them as coming from this good place, then when I say things like, oh, that makes sense why you're doing that, it doesn't sound like a platitude. I can actually say it makes sense why you're doing that. This is what's important to you. Your family is important to you. This is why you're behaving in that way. Is this right? And they start to really feel seen and understood. We're not just making these kind of general platitudes of, oh, I get it, that makes sense, and then just moving on. We're really trying to do a deep understanding of what's going on for a person. And when we can do that, and they feel seen and they feel understood, at least by me, it really kind of paves the way for helping them see what they're doing and how to make changes in what they're doing.
and that kind of ties into the next question a little bit, which is that many people have tried therapy, specifically couples therapy, and it didn't stick for them. What's different about your approach that allows couples to create lasting change? And it sounds like one of those things is you give people the truth and the raw materials to continue building and actually try to repair rather than making them feel better in the moment. Because while that's all nice and well and people need that, it's not always productive. It doesn't stick. It doesn't make people actually have lasting change in their relationships.
That's exactly right. And I think this is something that therapists, when you do emotionally focused couples therapy, learn over time as you start to learn how to do this therapy. Because you're absolutely right. When you just start talking to people at a surface level and providing platitudes and telling them how wonderful they are, and it doesn't help. But I think when people are working with a really good emotionally focused couples therapist, they feel like that therapist is talking to them in a very direct way, but from a place of understanding and knowledge about them. So it really doesn't feel so judgmental. I think that's the most important thing. I mean, people do feel judged in therapy. It's almost impossible not to. But we really, really work at trying to help people not feel that way. And the way we do that is not through some sort of wordsmithing of what we say to be polite and dance around things. It's by making sure that we have a really deep understanding of what they're doing and how they are showing up and why they're showing up that way. And so it comes from a place of depth and it comes from a place of authenticity. And I think that really helps. And the fact that we're not just telling people, hey, you got to stop doing that. You got to change your behavior. The fact that we're not just telling them something that, by the way, they already know. Nobody really believes that when I'm yelling at my partner, I'm doing anything effective. And the last thing you want to do is walk into a therapy session and have the therapist say, really, maybe you should yell less. I mean, okay. How about if we understand where this comes from and why it's happening and help you recognize that this is a very difficult thing to control? And until you and your partner start to trust each other more, these behaviors are probably not going to change on either side. And that just feels way more true. And so people respond to that, and they respond well to being talked to like an adult directly without too much worry about am I going to step on your toes or am I going to say something that's insulting? Instead, I'm going to try to help really understand what's going on with you. And I think people appreciate that.
I've only scratched the surface, but to wrap up for now, for any couples who might be listening who want to strengthen their connection or resolve longstanding patterns, what would you say is the first step to creating more secure, authentic, and thriving relationships?
Oh, such a good question. I think it's very difficult. In order to really make changes in your relationship, you really do have to have both people engaged in the issue. You really have to have both people kind of understanding what is going on and what needs to change. What I would say is vulnerability is generally the tool. And in most relationships, although not all, when you are able to kind of vulnerably own what you're doing and kind of notice the ineffectiveness of what it is and how you're showing up, and you can start to talk to your partner more from a vulnerable place, not just something that sounds vulnerable. I think there's this kind of misconception that if we just use the word feel, everything is okay. I feel that you are wrong. I feel that you are hurting me. These things, they're just protected ways of saying, hey, partner, you need to make changes because you're doing something bad to me. So to really kind of slow down and look at what is actually going on with you in the most vulnerable way and learning how to communicate that to your partner in a way that doesn't make them feel like they're the problem or they're defensive. And that's really what EFT helps people learn how to do. I think when you can do that, when you can show up from a really unprotected, authentic place and reach for your partner and ask them to meet you in a place that feels not like they are being judged, I think you really can start to make progress in your relationship.
Something that stuck out to me as you were explaining just now was the overall tone that I get from you, and therefore the type of practice that you run is just real and authentic, and you make people feel comfortable because you're not coming at it from a place of shame, but you're coming at it from a place of let's get to the nitty gritty and do the real work. Make it so that hopefully you won't need me for that long, because
That's
ultimately
right.
that's what I've heard from a lot of therapists on this show is the goal is not to keep people in therapy. Therapy is a tool and some people need it longer than others. But I think having a therapist like you and the other therapists in your practice who are determined to truly help clients and not just tell them what they want to hear, but also not shame them in any way is the best way to create lasting change.
I think so. I think, when you talk to people like they are adults, one of the things that I think is dangerous in our society is we're so afraid of hurting anybody's feelings that we don't talk to people directly. And people really do, I think, as long as you're being kind in what you're saying. I mean, I do try to make sure that, I'm talking to people in a respectful way. But people do really respond well and want to be spoken to as an adult. It's like I'm not inexpensive. People are coming in there, they're spending their time and their hard-earned money, and I think they want someone to tell them what they are seeing. But what EFT does and what this training that I have taken so seriously through my life is it helps us as therapists focus on the right things. When we are learning to speak directly and we're focusing on the things that are really effective, I think that's what makes this kind of therapy so effective.
Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for being here today. I learned a lot, and I know that whoever is watching also did. I'm very excited for people to be able to explore your site, your practice more, and thank you.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it. And I think the real question is anybody watching? I guess we'll find out.
We'll find out.
We'll have anybody that's seen the end of this, they can tell me if the final question was, is anybody watching? That will tell me if they really got
The
through it.
comments below.
Right, right.